Hello, beautiful bastards. The name is Wolf, and welcome to my Gathering Storm Shaman for Cycle 1 of last Epoch's release. If you're just here for some time codes regarding the passive tree and skills, you can check them out in the description box below. However, be warned, this is an experimental build. I am switching things up as we go, trying things out, and solving for the problems we encounter. So if you are going to join me on this, be warned of that very notion, because this is not like a full-fledged guide. This is a day one experience of a brand new skill, alright? But the experience is a phenomenal one. It is a Battle Mage archetype beauty. I'm very much a big fan of that. You dive in, do some melee attacks, and all kinds of magical effects happen. The Gathering Storm will first giving you the Storm stacks, which release Storm bolts, and that just nukes the entire screen if you get enough charges. Now, it's a wonderful playstyle. It's very reminiscent of the Swipe Bears, but if I am right, and my predictions could be off, but if they're not, it should end up being a faster character. It should be a stronger character in terms of damage output, although, of course, in terms of tank, it will be a little less, because we're talking about a Druid versus a Shaman, right? But overall, it should be a phenomenally strong character that can do all the content, although the quality of life, and to make the build really shine, you are going to need several uniques. We'll talk about them in just a second. So it is definitely not something I would recommend to just dive in directly, just day one blind, unless you know what you're doing. It might have been a better choice if you want to level this build to just go with Thorn Totems, a Thorn Totem Shaman build, which is a tried and true tested leveling build, and just try to transition from that into this Gathering Storm for maximum efficiency, so to speak. But yes, having that said, if you do enjoy the Battle Mage archetype like I do, Gathering Storm is probably going to be one of the best skills for you out right now on the Primalist. So let's talk about it in terms of the passive tree and the skill tree, and hopefully you guys can recommend some changes or perhaps suggest some things as we are trying to improve this build and maximize its potential. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the character then. We have level 60 right now, which is fairly early in its progression. Like I said, day one. As far as gear goes, however, it is very scuffed gear. But I've already been able to do monoliths and progress through them, even with this absolutely abysmal gear. So make sure that you appreciate not needing the greatest tools in the box to be able to get it to function at least. I do want to get more attack speed on the weapons with spell damage and whatever is useful. I do ultimately want to get some health combos like hybrid health and percentage health and flat health on both the boots, chest, and helm, together with Gathering Storm related levels. I believe there's a nice affix on the helm that's going to give us more stacks even. Otherwise, it's just fixing your resistances and getting as much attunement wherever you can get it, which is very important. However, the mandatory thing is, of course, having at least an idol that gives you the ability to summon a Thorn Totem on hit. You only need one. They do go up to like 10%, but I've already had a reasonable uptime at 4. So if you have anything more than 4 and have some good amount of hits going, you should be fine. You only need the one, but it is mandatory. Other than that, let's talk a little bit about the passive tree. We have a traditional 20 points in the Primalist, some health, some attunement, because it's one of our main scaling stats, some resistances, which with the Shaman Totem and passive is going to pretty much cap out lightning and cold directly like that, which is very, very comfy. The mandatory harmony of blades to enable dual wielding, and then some more health and some sustain, which is fairly good as well for early leveling, that health restored. So don't be afraid to take that as soon as you can. On top of that, we have the Beastmaster tax. It has never really changed. It's still really good and still very mandatory. I might add some additional points depending on what we want to end up doing, depending on how squish I feel. Although with the amount of attack speed, 2 points in Boar Heart is more than enough to keep it up pretty much full time once you really get going. In Druid, I am planning on picking up the Druidic prowess for 5 attunement, plus the additional +1. And I most likely will take this through Spirit Warden, Also get some more sustain there as well, which is very, very nice and comfy. In terms of the actual main mastery we have decided on, the Shaman, yeah, we are pretty much picking up any totem buffs and attunements and any gathering spirit related perks, or Stormbolt perks specifically, which is pretty much the name of the game. We have attunement and pen. We have armor buff here with active totems, some more attack speed with totems. Tempest Form is really, really nice. Shock, chill, health, mana gain, just perfect. 2 Stormbringer points for a travel. I might pick up some Avatar of Thunder. Getting spell lightning damage is really, really nice. However, for now, I want to round out my Rune of Awe. And I have a Dervish as well as a Rhythm of Thunder, because I want to travel as fast as I can to Thunder Strikes and max that out to at least 4 points for the passive. Probably just 5 points, because getting more Storm Bolts on melee hits that already trigger Storm Bolts as well through generating Storm Stacks is just going to fill the screen with lightning. We will round out the capstone with Conflux for just more wonderful stats, as well as Ascended Circle for even more powerful spell damage, because we have a bunch of totems active. That's kind of the name of the game, right, for a Shaman. Totems equal power, and this is a lot of power based on your totems. Depending on my mana requirements, I may also pump into Elemental Shrines. I will do that regardless, I think, due to the attunement aspect of it. So if you are wondering about mana sustain in the late game, well, there you go. There's more mana here. And on top of the skills, having a bunch of mana gain as well, it's going to be fairly straightforward. Gathering Storms has a couple of wonderful things that we like to address. First and foremost, we have Two-Eyed Storm. This is one of the reasons we go dual wield, duplicating the Storm Bolts basically, giving you this innate passive AoE, which is very, very comfy. We achieve this by going through Wind Fury for attack speed, some pen through Thunderous Strikes, and then Excited Bolts, which gives us more damage based on mana consumption. However, it does mean we are consuming mana, which we then address with Mana Fused Storm, which is going to give us mana based on our Storm stacks of a maximum to 5, which is very, very lovely. On the right side, we also pick up Island Cleaver for 2 points, or with 2 points, for more Storm stack chances in AoE situations. We round this off with at least a singular point in Energized by the Skies. I am contemplating maybe getting more points in here, depending on how my mana turns out, because getting more stacks is, of course, a good thing. We also pick up Tempest Weapon right here, just to get some spell damage scaling per melee damage, since we are doing melee attack speed and have melee weapons. Tempest Weapon is just a nice way to help that facilitate some spell damage. On the left, we dig Looming Clouds, mostly as a travel node, but it's a perfect thing, giving us more Stormbolt chance. The Lightning Strikes Twice is a mandatory tool against rares and bosses. It's just more damage. You want to pick this up fairly early if you can, after picking Two-Eyed Storms. A Storm Gatherer, or a Storm Gathers, I mean, gives you more Storm stacks. I don't have to explain why that is a good thing. It's just more stuff. In the Eye of the Storm, this allows us to tie in Maelstrom a little bit more neatly into this build, which is going to be very, very good for us for a multitude of reasons. We'll talk about that once we get to the Maelstrom. I'm also thinking about picking up 4 points of Concentrated Storm, if I can justify it, depending on how my gear turns out and how much level of Gathering Storms I can get on my chest, I think it is. And then once I have the gear and the scaling, I will also pick up Rending Vortex to get into that crit, because if I'm right, this should pretty much allow us to solve crit fairly easy, which allows us to get large damage numbers as a result, which is, of course, exactly what we want. Yes, we also are using Storm Totem. I am mostly using this for its buff components through Storm Rider as well as Grounding Conduit. I'm working towards Shock Fury for a little bit more melee lightning. And then, of course, we also have the Blizzard, which kind of helps tie it all in, as well as making it so that it can hit a lot more targets due to its AoE component, right? Which makes Storm Rider actually trigger based on hitting shield enemies. And since an AoE is pretty much chilling a large zone, and it's constantly hitting within that large zone, it's pretty much up all the time, which is why we are running around so quickly, so comfortably. And once we manually, or at least automatically, can cast Storm Totem through the relic, the unique relic that you have, it's going to smooth out even more, and it's just going to feel really, really good. We have Warcry, nothing too fancy here. We do want to pick up Fury Strikes because it's going to give us more attack speed. This should be of fairly obvious sentiment. On the left, we have the Whirlpool to tie in the Maelstrom even more than we had before. We also have, of course, the Cleansing of the Ailment, which is just quality of life and some healing. Very comfy. I am working towards Shallow Breaths. That minus 50% cooldown is going to, of course, facilitate more immunity, more cleansing of ailments, more healing, and more whirlwinds, as well as an easier time of keeping Berserker as well as the Fury Strikes going. Just very good. Maelstrom is a wonderful thing. Once you can get 6 stacks permanently, which once you get enough attack speed or Shallow Breaths and everything tied in, it should have a permanent haste effect as well as a permanent frenzy. On top of that, we are picking up the Power of the Storm, since they changed that with Storm Bolts now. It is triggering Storm Bolts. I am running with Energize to get a little bit more AoE. Right now, I'm running Strong Tights to do a -2 to the 6 requirement, which means that if we Warcry, it's immediately active. I am planning to spec out of these points once I have a more consistent permanent +6 Maelstrom. And then I will most likely just dump them all into Essence of Debris to get more stun chance. And of course, we also have some more dodge rating, which is just very, very comfortable because I am trying to solve the defensive layer of this build, not being a Druid, of course. Yes, and then of course, the last but not least, the Thorn Totems. We are triggering this indeed through the Idol, as I showed you. This is going to be pretty much just the way to secure all our buffs from the Shaman tree. They all summon automatically through the trigger, and they all trigger at the same time due to Grove Mind. And on top of that, it allows us to actually do a bunch of armor shred, so we don't need it necessarily on our gear, or if we want to shred more and faster, we can get some on the gear. But this is going to be the primary source that we don't really have to think about because it's going to be automated. I am planning on picking up through torrents of things, through lethal tickets. I'm going to pick up Titan's Bane. Which of course is going to make it a single projectile, which then allows us to get Spriggan's Wrath, at least 1 or 2 points depending on the pack density, to get piercing, and that should round out the build quite well. So that's kind of what my game plan is right now. If you, however, want to jump around with Fury Leap, know that you can just use it without having it spec'd, but you could theoretically drop Storm Totem, I guess, if you want to run Fury Leap spec'd. But then you are going to lose out on, of course, the Storm Rider, the Grounding Current, or the Grounding Conduit, and all the benefits that come from it. So be wary of it. I am still experimenting, but this is kind of what the build is. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you have any ideas on how to improve this. In the meantime, I'll keep streaming, I'll keep leveling, and I'll keep you guys up to date if I make any new changes to the build. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night. Take care. And I am out.